Today's session. Today we're going to be covering IBM's Smarter Cities initiative with case studies of how technology has helped to solve some of the more complex problems in cities around the world. And I'm personally excited to hear about this presentation on a number of different levels. First, I'm currently a councilman in Ascension Parish, representing the Prairieville area, which, as you know, has been booming. And Ascension Parish in general has been one of the top 100 fastest growing counties in the country for many years now. And so we're actually in the middle of developing a comprehensive master plan to help try to address some of these challenges with growth. But I'd also know that technology and better and more efficient systems can certainly help with those challenges as well. Secondly, I've actually worked in information technology in the healthcare field for about the last decade. And the more I'm in government and healthcare, the more I've come to realize there's a lot of similarities between the two, and one of them being that they're both very ripe for efficiencies. But they're also both very complex, very large, high-pressure environments, and they both have the challenge, or maybe I should say opportunity, of dealing with the public. And let's be honest, I mean, people are challenging, and it's not just the ones that call me about their neighbor's grass clippings that have blown into their yard, and I need to handle that right away because, you know, we love those as councilmen. That's the best. But seriously, people are challenging because humans, by their very nature, are resistant to change. We're creatures of habit. And so it's very hard to get people to try to move from their status quo, especially with the longer they're in it, the more set in their ways people become. So progress, though, cannot really be made until you figure out a way to move beyond that status quo. And progress, whether you're in business or whether you're in government, it really means delivering better and more improved services for less. And in today's day and age, you cannot do that unless you're leveraging technology and in every area that you possibly can and really maximizing its use. But even beyond the people challenges, there's a lot of other challenges that remain for governments and cities in regards to technology. First, across so many different areas of service that government provides, how do you make sure you're looking at the big picture? How do you make sure that all the different service lines and departments and areas are communicating and interfacing with each other? Second, how do you present meaningful data to civic leaders to help them make better and more informed decisions? Because nowadays, the challenge isn't so much in trying to find the information, especially when you can look up anything in the palm of your hand immediately. It's really about trying to determine what information is truly valuable and what are the key drivers of change on which you need to direct your focus. And lastly, in an age of an interactive web and social networking and increased public transparency, how do you engage with the public and engage the community to get them invested and involved in building their better community? These are all questions and some of the challenges that IBM's Smarter Cities initiative has been designed to answer. And with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our speaker today, Mr. John Gordon. John has over 12 years of experience in the IT field, and before joining IBM, he served as the Vice President of Marketing for the Frame Relay Forum. Since joining IBM, he's held a number of senior strategy, market management, and business development positions. And as the Director of Business Partner Marketing, he's worked with over 40,000 clients to develop and promote innovative business solutions. In his current role, he's the Director of IBM's Global Smarter Cities initiative, where he works with city leaders around the world to improve their communities using technology. And it is that expertise that he's going to share with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Gordon.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And it's really exciting for me to be here. So thanks to Philip and Boo and everyone for inviting me to join you. See, everybody's got lunch, right? So you're all set. You're getting fed after this morning. What I'm going to try and do over lunch is, I'm just going to try and get you guys to think a little bit bigger here. I'm going to talk to you about some possibilities. That doesn't sound very good, does it? No. Can you shut this one off? All right. I'll shut this one off. How's that? Is this better now? Anyone? Okay. Okay. So what I hope we're going to talk about over lunch in a booming voice there is how you guys can be thinking about some of these challenges that are facing cities all around the world. I have a great job. I won't kid you. I love what I get to do. I get to go around and talk to leaders around the world who are very passionate about the cities that they're in. It was great last night for all of you who were able to attend the opening keynote, where we heard about some of the changes that have been happening, all the investments that are happening across Louisiana with Mayor Holden and the Louisiana Speaks champions, right, who are all here trying to help make a difference. It's great to talk to people like this. I mean, even Chris here, right? Chris is 2 years as a councilman, right? He's got his first new park in Ascension Parish opening up in a few weeks, I think. So you guys will all be invited for the grand opening. Free Wi-Fi in the park, right? Which is, that's about all I need to live, right? So really exciting times. But it's great to see and work with people like you who are trying to make a difference in the communities. Let's be honest. There's a ton of people that live in the regions that each of you work in who have absolutely no idea what you're doing. True? Right? You guys are out here slaving away, doing the hard work, thinking about things to make it better for everybody around in your community, for your families, for your kids, but even for the people you don't know. Heck, even for the people you don't like. And you're still trying to make it a better place because you guys see it as the right thing to do. And it's a very impressive thing that you guys are working on, so I applaud all of you for even taking the time to be here and think about these things. So what I want to talk to you about is how you can think about technology and how information and how your cities operate as a set of systems in ways that people haven't considered before. But I think Chris said it really well in the opening, right? He said we're trying to deliver better service, I think you said, Chris, right, at lower costs for what's out there. That's hard to do, right? To deliver better service, to fund smart growth, to drive these initiatives, we've got to be thinking about things a little bit different. So I want to give you a little overview about how we're thinking about it and getting to work with cities around the world to address these. So I'll start off with a quick little picture to get your heads around what we're doing in cities.
For the first time in history, more people live in cities than anywhere else.
Which means cities have to get smarter.
New York has smart crime fighting.
Paris has smart healthcare.
Smart traffic systems in Brisbane keep traffic moving.
Galway has smart water.
Smart meters in Dallas, Houston,
and a smart grid in Copenhagen keep energy flowing.
Smart ideas are happening
All over the world.
I want to bring them all together in your city.
The smarter
A
Paris.
smarter Stuttgart.
São Paulo.
Copenhagen, Kyoto.
Planet of smarter cities.
That's what I'm working on.
I'm an IBMer.
Let's build a smarter planet.
Okay, kind of interesting, right? Interesting area to think about. What's fun is I get to fly around to a lot of these cities and talk to leaders, usually in coach, right, which hurts you, to Shanghai and back, I'll tell you. But it's interesting to see how different it is in different parts of the world. And what's been interesting, a lot of people look at us and say, all right, you guys are a technology company. Right? Most people look at IBM and think technology, right? They don't think about what would you be doing talking to city leaders. In fact, it has happened. Some of the very first times I've gone in to talk to different mayors, they said, don't you want to talk to my CIO? Right? This is where you guys know. This is where you belong. But we've really been evolving what we think at to be more of a consultative, business-oriented, information-driven, and process company, where we're now sitting down and helping people look at how their business goes, how they can put together different areas of the city to run better. All of us, we live in cities, right? We live in different parts, and we want to figure out how to improve the quality of life just like you do. So we've had a series of these global discussions, which have been interesting. So I just put up a couple of the dates here. On these things that happen, it's not us speaking, right? IBMers probably speak for 15% of the time in these global conferences. But we facilitate meetings that have leaders from all over, different sized cities, small, large, that they come together and they talk about the issues that they're facing, right? They talk about what challenges they're trying to find. They talk about infrastructure, how we deal with aging infrastructure. We don't have more funds to fix things right now, but we have stuff that's breaking. And as we go through and have these discussions, it gives us more and more insight into what folks like yourselves are doing on a daily basis. And what we've realized is there's a couple things that are very common across these different types of cities that we can use technology to help address. And it really doesn't matter what size city you're. How many of you guys, I know there was some questions in some of the earlier sessions about how do these principles and things apply to rural areas. Show of hands, how many people consider themselves representing or from an urban parish city overall? Urban. Okay, I think that's probably 2/3. So rural? Okay, good. So I'm going to try and make sure we talk about both a little bit, right? So it feels like, I'll mention New York, but you don't have to be New York for some of these things, right? So we'll try and make it very relevant. So what am I hearing from developed cities? I've kind of listed this out because I'll tell you, I'm hearing different things if I'm in China and they're adding a 10 million person city from scratch, in the next year, right? That is completely different from what's happening in, established cities in different parts of the world. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a relocated Yankee, right, if you can tell from my accent. I'm losing most of my Boston accent, right, but it's taken me trips through North Carolina into Texas to get there. So, but we work in these existing cities, and we tend to see this type of dynamic overall. Growing populations, generally, burdening the aging infrastructure that we have, right? And we can't fix them because we've got these revenue gaps, we've got tax gaps right now, economic pressures, so we can't drive anything. And at the end of the day, none of us got into this field because we wanted to manage infrastructure, right? Anybody? Anybody came here when they said they wanted to get involved in city planning and designs, they said, this is really about maintaining sewer systems, and that's what I want to drive. That's my aspiration, right? I want to look at energy lines. I want to look at repaving roads. That's what I want to get to, right? All the pictures we've been hearing about growth this morning have been, let's talk about quality of life. Let's talk about how to transition things. It would be great to do that, but there's mandatory things we have to do in order to enable us to then do some of these growth areas. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those facts just to share with you. So we like to point out that 2007 was the first time globally there were as many people in urban areas as in rural areas. Right? We've typically been overpopulation, a rural culture, and this is globally. And as we've seen that change, 2007 was the crossing point for a lot of reasons, right? For a lot of the efficiencies that we've talked about in the different sessions, a lot of the opportunities that we can bring into cities. But we've seen that trend shift, and it's growing. Right now, I know there have been different dynamics in Louisiana, right? And we've seen different population changes. You guys have had a lot of serious adversities that have happened here that have affected population changes. And it was great to hear last night, was it Andy that was talking about, he thinks for the first time we might be able to use the word celebrate. Did I get that right? That we're actually making progress and turning around and getting some good out of all of the challenges that have happened. It was really encouraging to hear. But this trend is actually forcing a lot of people to think differently. And thinking differently because these population changes are happening, the insights that we get out of that, you can apply across the board. So whether or not this represents the type of growth and dynamics you have, the fact that other people are doing it is it's driving innovation that you can still leverage. It still helps you operate more efficiently and then helps you get into those growth areas. Second one is aging infrastructure. So we have a lot of aging infrastructure around this country. They say a significant water line bursts somewhere every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, right? In DC, it's every day, right? And they'll talk about major problems happening. Untreated sewage can be spilling into the Potomac, right? There's all kinds of challenges here that happens. But our infrastructure's been around for a while, right? And it's hard to figure out how many of your parishes have the budget to just rip up everything you have and put down a brand new one. Anybody? It doesn't happen, right? So we have to be really strategic about how we're going to address these issues without incurring those types of costs. Because again, this just gets us back to square one. Anyone ever have a major appliance break, like a refrigerator break? Anybody? That's the least fun thing that ever happens, right? When your refrigerator breaks and you've got to go spend however many hundreds of dollars just to buy a new refrigerator, just so you can still have the milk cold, most of the time you feel like that was just not fun at all, right? It's that way with infrastructure. When things are breaking and they're going down, if you feel like you've got to spend the money and time to fix it, you have to. There's no way. You can't have the warm milk, right? So, but you have to get these fixed, but it's keeping you from doing some of these aspirational areas. Same for roads. So we saw that 33% of U.S. roads were in poor, mediocre, or fair condition, and 27% of bridges overall were deficient. Okay, this may not always be a city issue, right, in terms of, or a parish, right, in terms of who owns and manages roads, but the impacts of it are felt by you, right, because it is something that's there. So how you're going to help and address and work with those, and how your citizens are going to work around that matter. And then energy is the same way. We're really driving up energy consumption. We know we've got to find different ways to do it. So there's a lot of stresses just to keep things working. Here's a picture of it's overall consumption. So collectively consumption across people and businesses. Yep. Yeah, but it's also greater populations, greater demands from businesses that have it now. So and this is where the projections are right now. So there's lots of things that we're trying to curb this trend, right? We're trying to get over it so that this doesn't happen. But if we continue as we are, that's where we're headed. So if you look at where revenue's coming from, right? This is from the National League of Cities. It just shows an overall average for the U.S. on where revenue comes from. You can see over half of it comes from different taxes, right? Property taxes, 32%, sales 15%, income taxes is 4%, others. We talked about federal funds. There was the whole question this morning about how much the impact of the federal government was. On a standard local level, that's about 3% of the revenue base. Right, so just as you're looking at what's happening. What are they telling us is happening on those areas? This is percent of cities that are moving up, they're improving in these areas for revenue, or they're falling down. You can see where it is overall. Property tax, 92% says because of the economy and property tax revenues, they're not having as much as they did before. 74% say income tax has been declining. 88% says sales tax is going down. So that's the major sources of revenue for most cities, and they're all going the wrong way, right? We're running into this problem, right? So we still have these demands for services. We have more people right now that need help, that need jobs, that need training, but the revenue to support that's going the wrong way. And meanwhile, I'll go back to the point that that's not what most of us want to do, right? When I talk to the mayors of different cities, when I talk to the mayor of Rio de Janeiro, they have the Olympics coming up, they've got the World Cup coming up. They want to use that opportunity to completely transform part of the city. Right? They want to take areas that haven't had the right type of economic development before and use that infusion of funds and capital and interest and drive it forward to become someone different. It was interesting. They're very specific down in Rio that their goal was to be Barcelona. Right? It was funny. Everybody said it. So apparently, the mayor must have said this, and the whole team has now adopted it. They said Barcelona had the Olympics come in what was that, 88, 92? I forget which one. When was it? 92? 92. So they were 92, and from then, right before the Olympics, Barcelona had so much tourism. They were ranked, mediocre city overall in terms of how much they were driving. Since the Olympics, they had that influx of interest, and they maintained it. Right, 20 years later, Barcelona is in a completely different place than they were before. But what's key here is that they haven't had another Olympics, right? They haven't had another Olympics, they haven't had a World Cup, they haven't had that big activity. So they use those facts that they had a one-time infusion to make transitions in things that were going to allow them to drive that growth organically themselves, right? This is something we talked about last night at dinner as well, is in this area, right now, there's a great infusion of interest in what happens in Louisiana, right? You've got a lot of people that are interested, you've got a lot of support, and it's great, right? And there's a lot of good work that's happening from that. As planners, we've got to think about the fact that that won't always be there, right? So the work that we do now has to provide the infrastructure to enable us to have that growth to go forward so we can do more smart growth, right? These things cost money. It's not always going to come from the outside. In fact, I'll do one more Rio story. I'm stuck in that when I get off a trip, my head is from my last trip, right? So I was in Rio not too long ago. They initially were talking about development of part of a city. And, they've got a group over here, and they've got a port, beautiful port, right? Just like you guys have a lot of great river access, but they're right on the water, and they want to revitalize this whole area. And they were thinking about, they've got great ideas and plans for what they want it to look like. And we pushed on them, who do you want to be there? How are you trying to drive the growth? What are the jobs you envision those people doing? And it depended on who we talked to, right? Some of the individuals that were there said, well, I expect the people that live over here will move over here. I said, okay, that could happen. And what jobs will you have them do? Well, they'll keep doing the same jobs they were doing here, but now over here. About the same kind of commute, right, to where they were before. So it's a challenge, right? Because you've invested a lot of capital and money and resource in building up part of the city, but you haven't introduced any net new sustainable ongoing investments and revenue going on. If everyone keeps the same jobs, people just move across town. So they're thinking about, how do I provide that infrastructure to attract and drive growth? I'll give you an example. So a buddy of mine and outside of Austin, has a place out in the country, right? Definitely not in a city at all. And so this goes to people who said they were from rural areas. Biggest change that happened for them was Time Warner Cable put in high-speed internet. Right? What did that do? The group that was in this rural area was pretty stagnant. It had been the same. They hadn't seen a lot of growth from it, not a lot of new investments. When they had high-speed connectivity, my friend who happens to be an oil and gas commodities trader, his job needs a telephone and an internet connection. He can be anywhere he wants. He does not care, right? So this place that's very rural happens to be on a beautiful lake. So he said, all right, I'm going to go work from the beautiful lake. So he sits there where he is. He now brings capital into that area. 2 houses down from him is another guy who works in IT, right? Now that they can do this, people have started swarming to the area because they like it as an option, and they bring new capital in. That's sustainable, right? That's going to drive the region for some amount of time and allow it to keep going. This is very, this is different in different industries. In my industry, right, I work in technology, so that Skype thing this morning was, pretty standard for us. But when I now hire people, we've hired people out of college, and we bring them in, and we'll talk about what the job description is, we'll talk about what they do, we'll talk about the pay. And it was funny, a few years back, after we had gone through these and negotiated people we were going to hire and came to a good agreement, they said, hey, we haven't talked about where my office is yet. And we actually look at them and say, well, where do you want to live? I don't care, right? It doesn't matter. We get to a point where now people are choosing where they want to live because they want to live there. And, we're changing as we see new people come up, right? We were talking BlackBerry iPhones, right? Very personal debate to go through this kind of thing. I happen to be a BlackBerry addict, right? Chris has now transitioned to an iPhone. So, anyway. But you live on these kinds of devices. People are used to it. They know how to work this way. So if you start thinking about, as new generations are growing up, that they're able to do this, Chris's Park has free Wi-Fi access. I would literally watch my kids there while doing some work. So I could do 2 in 1. I might take them out to a park at 3 in the afternoon, answer 50 emails, and let them play with other kids in the neighborhood on swings. It's great to be able to do that, right? But places that are thinking this way are bringing in activity. And I haven't worked with ETEL specifically, but I know they're in your parish, right? And that they're doing a lot of this type of connectivity work. So it was interesting that they're sponsoring this group. So this is a funny quote. Now that I live in Texas, I think I'm supposed to quote LBJ once in a while. So I thought this one was funny, right? So I don't know if everybody working in cities should be familiar with this one. But he said, when the burdens of presidency seem unusually heavy, I always remind myself it could be worse. I could be a mayor. And it's kind of funny. I was with the Gallup organization in D.C., I think last week, maybe a week and a half ago. And they were talking about, they do surveys all around the world to different people. City leaders are probably the most similar function around the world. Heads of states are really different, right? If you live in different types of countries, your job is different. Provincial leaders can be very different depending upon what you do. City leaders, a lot closer, right? So for all of you who are thinking about development, you're thinking about leadership, you're thinking about what it takes locally in those cities to work together, you've got a lot of things in common with some of these others. So that's what we're trying to share. Okay, great. So I've talked about stuff that you guys knew already, right, and haven't told you anything that was new. I was just trying to give you time to finish your lunch. Right, so what's happening in some of these other places? Where are we finding things? We realize that by looking at different information that's out there, different ways that systems are working together, people can do things better. And the idea is, as Chris said, right, deliver better service, because better service attracts people to the area, but deliver at a lower cost. So not only are you delivering service to bring in new funding and capital, but you're lowering your costs, which means the difference between your expenses and the service you're delivering widens. All of that is giving you the sustainable funding to drive these other ideas, right? So that's what we're trying to help people think about. So in California, Social Services Group, I'll talk about them a little more. I'll talk about most of these in more detail. But they figured out how to drive case management across a particular area. They improved the services they're giving to those clients, and I'll talk to you more about that. But they saved almost $70 million. That's big, right? Better service, $70 million savings, right? That's a huge change. Texas, we had a city that looked at water management, eliminated a third of the calls that they went out on. That's big, right? If you don't have to do that, you don't have to go out and fix these things over and over again because you've figured out how to get ahead of it. That's smart. Public safety in New York, we're now helping fire departments go in and be the most prepared they've ever been. So when they show up to a building, they know everything about it and they don't get surprised, right? And that's not only saving time and effort, it's saving lives, right? So I'm going to talk about each of those in a little more detail in a second. But the two things that are driving this are, one, information. Right? And I'll talk about what's changed about information, but in the last decade, the amount of information we have, our ability to look at it, process it, analyze it, do trending against it, is unlike it's ever been before. Right? And we're at a completely different position in how we can look at and take information out of the world. And so if you know how to do that, you can make some of these decisions a lot smarter and then make the right choices for your organization. The second one is we've gotten a lot better at systems thinking, right? So in one of the other groups I was in next door right before this session, they were talking about how fun it is to get people from different parts of the city to want to share data with each other, right? You guys ever run into that? People get a little territorial once in a while, right? But we deal with this all the time. We deal with it at the corporate side, right? We deal with it in the public sector side, but how to help share between different groups and show the value that they have in working together. So these two things, the change that we've had in information and the change that we've had looking at systems dynamics have fundamentally shifted the way we're able to work in cities than what we've done before. So let's talk about the information side. I'm going to do both sides. I'm going to talk about information, I'm going to talk about systems. So information, has anybody seen a bunch of these IBM Smarter Planet ads before? Have you guys ever seen those? We like to advertise them in sports things and stuff. My favorite one was I was in Heathrow in London speaking to a bunch of clients. And I get out of the airport and I'm walking to get my car. And on the bus stop for the rental car shuttle, there's a big poster on the side, right? And it says, IBM Smarter Planet, rivers warn before they flood. Rivers warn before they flood. So I went in and talked to the clients the next day, and I said, how many of you guys saw that sign? And probably a third of them, half of them raised their hand. I said, how many of you had any idea what it was talking about? And nobody did, right? They all laughed. They said, this is kind of a crazy thing. But it's going at looking at how we can collect data, right? We can collect data at water levels, at trends, at flows up and down streams, so we can predict with weather, within a really fine area, what the impact of different rain events and other things are going to be, and we can get the information out to other people so that they can proactively get ahead of it, right? So that approach, which really didn't come out in the rivers warn before they flood sign to me, but that approach applies in a lot of different places, including how cities run. So what's happened on the data side? Well, we can get information from more things than ever before, right? We've got RFID tags. We've got, everybody's got a camera phone now, right, which can give you input. You can have people take pictures of properties and potholes and whatever. You have ways to get information for what's going on in your city that you couldn't before. Here's some weird ones that I've run into. So two of my favorite really exotic ones is up in South Bend, Indiana. We won't mention the Sugar Bowl, right, a couple years back, but in South Bend, Indiana, we put sensors on the bottom of manhole covers. Manhole covers, right? Sensors on the bottom. So we could look at sewer flow going underneath it, and if the flow slowed down at a time when there was a rain event, so we knew that it should have gone the other way, we knew something was blocked. We didn't wait for it to back up. We could go in and actually tell them, this area has got something going on. Go fix it before you have a problem. Saves the issues, keeps the service running, it's much cheaper to fix something beforehand than afterwards, right? So it's an interesting thing to do. Most interesting one I've run into, which was a little bit different here, was we worked with a oil drilling group up in the Nordics in Europe. And they wanted to be able to find small leaks. They wanted to be able to detect what was going on early. And it was hard to figure out in this mass. It wasn't a deep water area, right? But it was still a drill that was going in. We found we could put sensors on mussels, right? Clams underwater. We could put sensors on them. And so what these things did was, normally they're opened up, right? They take in water, they get nutrients out of it, they put it back in. That's how they feed. If there's impurities that come around them, they all close. They're like canaries in a coal mine. They were doing this automatically. We found out we could go in and tell when a whole bunch of them closed at once, something was going on, right? Might have been from the drill, might have been from something else, but it was a really interesting way to go out and figure out how to get data from the world in a way that people hadn't thought about before. So that's wacky, right? So I'm not telling you guys you should all go instrument some types of mollusks in your area, right? Let's clear that now. But the fact is we can, right? And what that says is that we're opening up the possibilities of where we can gather information that we couldn't before. Second thing is connectivity, right? Where you can connect to anything almost anywhere. So I talked about in those rural areas, now getting connectivity out to them, you're opening up whole new opportunities for business and growth. People are able to connect together and share information from wherever they are. So we've got a lot more of that happening. And how much we can process has changed. We can, I had to read this a few times because I don't even know this word well enough, right? But a quadrillion operations per second. I don't know about you guys. I'm not sure I would even write down how many zeros are in a quadrillion correctly, but I'm just going to guess it's a lot. So because we can look at that many things that fast, what it's enabled us to do is things like trending. We used to be able to take in all this data and analyze it, and we'd build long-term plans, right? We'd be able to see what's going to happen over the next month, year, etc. I can now look at traffic in a city, and I can tell you what it's going to look like in an hour with pretty good accuracy, right? I can see where it's going and then be able to predict that. I can take rain events that are coming in and predict where, as an energy utility, you're likely to have an outage based on your past history with rain coming in. So you can put your trucks in the right area beforehand, right? With pretty good accuracy. None of this is perfect, it's just better. But because it's better, it gives you a higher level of service. Things are up faster again. Reduced cost, you're not trucking people all over the place, and you're being much more efficient with how you're delivering. So because we can do this in ways we didn't used to be able to, it's changed the rules on how we're able to think about our organizations. Okay, so I want to give you a few examples about how we're doing this in some specific spots, but it's interesting that there's information across all these different areas, from government services to transportation, energy and utilities, healthcare. There's a set of information out there that a lot of times we don't know. And by figuring out what the relevant parts are for us, there's ways we can harness it. So I'm going to show you another quick video and hopefully not explode with the mic about it.
For the first time in history, more than 50% of the people on the earth live in cities.
How do civic leaders educate the young, keep their citizens safe and healthy, and attract and facilitate commerce?
A city is a system of systems. The more we understand how those systems interact and share information, the better we can help the civic leaders to make decisions.
It's really where these systems touch each other that we can discover new ways of improving our cities.
In Rotterdam, it is important for us to know when heavy rainfall will occur. For example, to warn people to avoid certain roads, which most certainly will get overflown when the rainfall comes.
In a smart education system, we can know how schools are performing and redeploy resources so that kids in lower performing schools have every opportunity to achieve at the same level that their peers are in high performing schools.
Bringing energy efficient lighting solutions to the market can help cities to save money, but also free up resources and means to reinvest in their future.
One of the things we're trying to do is consolidate information about several events at the same time into a common command control center so you can determine where the best use of assets is.
Information technology can help a municipality like Parma to give better services to the citizen.
Our goal and mission is to take people from A to B in the most comfortable and efficient way. If this is with the car, okay with the car. If it's with the train, with the train.
In my city, patients can consult their doctor through the internet with web cameras on a very high quality level.
These ideas are having a real impact today.
And if we take smart ideas from one city and share them with another, then eventually all of our cities will become smarter.
We can build a smarter planet, city by city.
So interesting examples, like Rotterdam was in there talking about looking at flooding. I thought it was interesting last night at the session when the senator was talking about trying to find other cities around the world who exist below sea level, right? There's places that we can do this, that they're trying to figure out how does Amsterdam work and other places. And figuring out the patterns that are there, that we can then apply some of those thinking to what we're doing. So I'll give you a couple examples. I'll start with some really, pretty simple ones, right? And we'll get more dramatic as we go. So social services with California. If I look at what California was trying to do, they had a lot of job training, they had a lot of unemployment assistance that they had within the county. Alameda County is up by Berkeley, Oakland, that area of town. And what they had is they had a bunch of different divisions that all looked at these clients and they brought them in and they'd try and help and handle and resolve their problems. They literally managed a lot of this by writing on Post-it notes, right, and keeping notes themselves. Had a huge caseload with the economy going where it was, and a lot of trouble trying to keep up with what was happening. They had trouble showing that people were even meeting the goals of what these programs had to do. So if it was a retraining assistance program and you were supposed to go and either take training or go apply for jobs, they wanted you to be out there to get better because they really thought those requirements were going to help people get their lives back in order. But they couldn't tell if people were meeting them or not. They didn't have a good way to put that back in place. They had some fraud that was happening there because they just couldn't get on top of tracking this. So we helped them put in a system to look at all that data and get a single view of the client, the citizen. It didn't matter which part of the social services group they were engaged with. They could see it end to end to make sure they were meeting those requirements. They found annually, $24 million, and their projection was over $70 million in 3 years. Right, that's a big number, right? But you don't have to make $70 million for this to be very relevant because it's not all about the cost savings, right? It's about the service. These programs were designed because we actually believe they help people. They get people back. They're going to get people the jobs they need, get them the training they want, and help them get their lives in order so that they're sufficient. And they weren't able to actually tell well that these things were being met. So this way they were able to get it back under control much better by seeing the data all together. Another one, Corpus Christi, right down the road from me. They had, every time there was a wastewater problem, they would do what most of us did. They got a problem, they'd send someone out to fix it. They got another problem, they'd send someone out to fix it again. What they found, as we helped them use some of the location systems that we talked about next door, is that about a third of their issues were all going through one area, right? They were all touching one part of the city, and they hadn't realized it before until we helped them take all these work orders and start putting them together spatially. They were able to proactively go in and fix, as they're focusing their investments, fix the place that was systemically causing a whole bunch of other issues and cut out a third of the work that they were driving. Right, so it really was about getting better service to the citizens, though that whole area now has good wastewater on a regular basis, but also focusing the development. Like we said at the beginning, you can't rip out your sewer system and put it back in. You've got to be very strategic on where you spend your time and dollars. We can look at things in a different way to figure out that where are the biggest issues that you can address more proactively. They did this, it was so successful in water and sewer, they started extending it to the other departments. So now even the departments can talk to each other about development and work they're going to do. If there is a water main that breaks somewhere and they have to rip up a road, they can let everybody else know. And if anyone else was expecting to need that road ripped up anyway, they try and opportunistically take advantage of it, even if that means moving their schedules a bit so that they don't have to rip the road up again a week later. So it's just better communication there. I like this one. So this was interesting. Richmond had the unfortunate position of being ranked as the 9th most dangerous city in the U.S. A number of years back. The following year, they increased that trend to go to the 5th, right? So that was not progress the way you want to reach the top of the rankings. They knew they had to do something different. So instead of just looking at data like we've talked about, all the first examples were how do you just see data that's there so you know what's going on better? We actually said, let's see if we can help predict what's going to happen by looking at where crimes have occurred, what's happened overall, how people have been, where events have been happening, so you can actually redeploy resources to be more effective at it. So we kind of entered a project with them. In their first year, by changing the way they optimized where their people were deployed based on what the trends predicted, they cut violent crime, I think it was 30%. It didn't stop at 1 year. I mean, these weren't blips. It wasn't a blip on the crime. It kept growing for a couple years. It wasn't a blip on the recovery. The second year, they took off another 40%. All right, so they moved from 9th to 5th to 99th, right, in ranks of most dangerous cities by getting this in place. And they said what's interesting about it is, anyone ever read that book, Blink, Malcolm Gladwell? Have you guys read that? Right, so the underlying story in it is that we make a lot of decisions on a daily basis because our mind is actually analyzing a bunch of things faster than we can even figure out what they're talking about. But we see the patterns innately, we know what to do, and so we decide, how to go through it. We don't have rules that we follow. Well, the thought was police officers do this, right? That's why seasoned, experienced police officers are very effective. They know what's going to happen, right? They've seen it, they've experienced it, they know how those activities are happening. And they can be a lot more effective than new people that come on who are very energetic and enthusiastic but haven't built up that internal analysis yet. Well, having this type of predictive capability, we gave it to them. So you're never going to replace someone who has all that experience. But we narrowed that gap dramatically by taking people who didn't have the insight to figure out where they should go and patrol and look at things and give them some ideas about where they could be. Yeah? Yeah, it's looking at the trending data for where different types of crimes have occurred geographically. It's combining it with a whole bunch of other different data of what's going on now to say likely this is going to happen. It got so bad I guess their worst day of the year is New Year's Eve, which I didn't know, right? But that was typically one of their really bad days. They'd always have a spike in major crime coming up. So they said we're going to do what this says and just follow it to the letter on New Year's Eve and see what happens. I think they had something like a 250% increase in guns they confiscated from people, and they cut down the incidents they had to report and respond to by like 40% on one day on their big spike day by just thinking about it differently. So again, there's data out there, right, that you can all look at, some of the examples I gave you. But what's getting more and more interesting is it's easier for us to start predicting. It doesn't have to be real time. These guys, I think they update their views every 4 hours or so. They can get an idea of what's going to happen. But you can start as your planners thinking ahead and how to address some of these challenges as they go forward. So I promise, I'm still the technology guy, right? But I promise not to show any architecture diagrams, right? I know you were enthralled by one. If you want one, I'll give you I'll hand draw you one after. But our approach for how all these things come together starts with how we look at data, how we find it, collect it from different parts of the city. And what I just challenge you guys to do is ask yourself, what data do you want to have? Don't think about what's out there. Don't think about what you've looked at before. Don't think about what just limit yourself that way. Open up your mind to say, what if I could know, where crime is happening in every place? What if I could know how wet the soil was around the levee at some point in time? What if I could know? Ask questions, right? Because what you'll find is, first, sometimes it exists, and second, sometimes you can get it in ways that you didn't know. So stretch that. Second one is analyze the patterns. So where could you find trends? Where could you think about that these types of areas are related? We talked about some in public safety. We talked about some in infrastructure management. But there's a lot that you can look at. And the third is, what can you do about it? So I had dinner with, where's Rusty? Is Rusty in the room here? No. I had dinner with Rusty last night, and he was talking about the fact that he's worked with people before who have tried to bring technology into different cities. And all they want to do is build a dashboard, right? They want you to look at a dashboard that shows a lot of numbers on it and stare at them to see, how many things have been called in today or how many reports happen. And that doesn't really get you to where you want to go. It's information. But the whole value of this is, what do you want to do about it? Right? When you have a water main break, what do you want to have happen? Do you want to change traffic flows? Do you want to alert public safety? What do you want to do that will provide the service better? And then think about how you can do it. Because there's a lot of things. You can put sensors on mussels underwater to sense oil leaks. There's a lot of things you can do that aren't that complicated. But it opens up your mind. So I just challenge you to think about those as you're deciding on your plans, what you'd like to know and how you'd like to run. So the second part is, a lot of that was examples of things we do within individual parts of the cities. But I think what's really interesting is a lot of the way we can address some of these more aspirational goals and challenges is how we help different parts of the cities think together, right? And work, is that the first red one? Okay, yeah, thanks. how they work together to drive better results. So I want to show you one other video of some work that we did in the town of Chesapeake, Virginia, and how they've used it to try and put different parts of their city together.
At over 350 square miles, it's one of the larger cities in Virginia, and it has more miles of deep water canals, including the Intracoastal Waterway, than any other city in the United States. The city's size and location make managing its infrastructure complex.
Being a smart city means that we have the technology, the innovation in place to make informed decisions. The key goal is to really break down the silos and really add business value across the city, and making IT one the driver for that.
To modernize the city's public works and utilities infrastructure, the city of Chesapeake contracted with IBM. The project touches everything from its water system to its parks to its fire and police departments.
When you have city working together, it's very important that you communicate well together. Having central management is the key to make that work.
Now that the city systems are connected, the different departments have a transparent view of what's going on across the city at any given time.
Maximo is giving us the ability to have the transparency through the divisions, to be able to see what work is being handled at what locations.
We don't have to go back and restore the road again or replant trees and shrubs. Now we go once, we do everything in conjunction, also save costs.
It's become a culture in public utilities that anytime there is a request for work, they've got to have a maximum work order number in order to perform the work, to get the materials that they need.
The ability to analyze data and share the findings across departments means the city can detect and react to potential problems more quickly.
Real-time data is always critical for a public utility like Chesapeake's. With real-time sensor data, it's a tool that we're looking forward to using because it allows us not only to identify things that occur, but address trends that may indicate that problems are developing.
You can make a wiser decision to replace things quicker before they become really problems. I believe it's important to get IT to the table right away. And that's the way you can have IT being more of the business that drives the engineering process and the change that really impact all of our departments.
Okay, so the value for Chesapeake was starting to get the city working together. And this is a couple examples of different departments coming together. New York Fire Department was a really interesting one because after the trade centers fell and they damaged a number of the buildings around it. Did any of you guys hear about the big fire they had in the Deutsche Bank building? Right, it was just outside one of the towers. It got very badly destroyed, but it was still there. Well, you can't knock down a building in New York City, right? You'll hit other things. So you have to take it apart piece by piece as you go through it. In the process of them taking that down, a fire had happened. Right? So fire broke out. The fire department rushes to the scene. It's up on one of the higher floors. They go up there to go put out the fire. As they get up to the top, the stairways are all boarded up. Or they didn't know that. So they didn't have stuff to break down. So they had to go back, get it ready, break down the doors. They break it down, attach the hoses to the standpipe, right, that connects all the water up to the building. Standpipe's been turned off. There's no water. So now they've got to figure out how to run water up so many stories up the stairs to get there. They get in, and there's usually a ventilation system to help with the smoke that comes out, but they had hung some type of plastic barriers to prevent asbestos from falling out, but it collected all the smoke in place, right? So it was issue after issue after issue that made this harder and harder to resolve than it should have been. In the effect to try and fix this, 2 firefighters lost their lives. Right, too much chaos, too much going on, too much unknowns, right? And the worst part about this, a department in the city or multiple departments knew all of that. They knew it, right? Buildings had inspected, you had fire codes that was in there. It was all known. They could have showed up to that with the right equipment, run up there, taken care of it, the way that they always do, and they wouldn't have had to deal with those surprises. But none of those groups knew how to talk to each other. So we went in and helped them figure out, there's 800,000 buildings. 800,000, that's a lot, right? 800,000 buildings in New York. We helped them figure out a way that they could pull together any data in the city from different departments, give it on a mobile device, so as the firefighters are running out there now to address these issues, they see in front of them anything that's known. Right? Still, nothing's perfect. It's a heck of a lot better. right? And you're finding ways to make sure that people talk. It's better service. You know, these people are risking their lives daily. It's going to help us, you know, prevent damage, protect people's lives, and just run more efficiently. So it was a great activity of getting all those departments to come together. Singapore has done this for transport, and I'm only going to spend a second on this one because it's a little different for here. But Singapore's looked across how they get people to move across the city by different areas. They tried to make public transport more attractive by making it easier. So giving you one card you can use for parking. They use road congestion charging, right through the middle of the cities. They do buses, subways. They've been able now to first make it easier for people to pay, but also make it easier for them to coordinate. So if a train is running a little late, they can hold up a bus a little bit because it gets the system back faster than letting that bus go and the next one catch up, right? So you ultimately optimize the system that way. So there are a lot of great things about Singapore. The challenge is a lot of the great transportation issues or solutions are happening outside the US right now. There's a much different public level of interest or tolerance or appreciation or whatever word you want to use for public transit. Right, in Stockholm we did this activity, right? They've got a bunch of different islands. They wanted to do road congestion charging, have a way they could drive right through. We could scan license plates at full speed, help them figure out, you know, who was going where and do congestion charging. They opened it up to a public referendum to say who wanted to do it. They said it'll be better emissions, cleaner roads. Overwhelmingly, it passed. I can only imagine if we ran that up in Austin, Texas, where I live, right, what that would look like. But I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be overwhelming passage. So it's very interesting that a lot of what we deal with is we might know what would work optimally for transport, but people may not be ready for it, right? Or we may have a lot of work to do to get over that. So we end up, in fact, some of the most interesting transportation solutions now aren't on the supply side, they're on the demand side. Make people not have to commute, right? A lot of people I work with work from home. We have cars, we don't drive them. I drive mine to the airport too often, but otherwise it sits there because I give them ways, I give employers incentives to have work at home a day, 1 day a week for employees, and I try and reduce the demand because driving up these other choices for supply are hard to do. So there's other things that we're working on here, but this is a hard one, right? This is one that it's a policy issue. It's not what we can do. Technology can do lots of things, right? But it's what people are open and willing to look at. For sake of time, I'm just going to skip a couple of these here. So I think the most important thing for each of you guys to think about is in wherever you are, think about what your goals are. Where do you want to go? What are the issues you want to address first? And then start thinking through that approach for, you know, is there information I can drive? Is there ways I can analyze things better? This is one I was just with a client recently. We kind of came up with a model similar to this, right? They wanted to figure out on the bottom left-hand side how their city integrates with itself better, just that they can get the information together and make it work. Then they wanted to figure out how they as a city can interact with their citizens more effectively. Can I take some processes, applying to start a new business or other things, can I get that permitting in an easier way? And then finally, they realized that people's experience in a city is not your interaction with the city, right? That makes up a portion of it, but a lot of it is your experience of the other people and the private sector enterprises and what's out there. So how can we foster community and development so that happens and people have that feeling when they leave the city? I did get asked, as I am the technology guy, how to make sure you guys at least had some technical things you could ask people for and say you went to a technology pitch. So, there's some different capabilities you might use to help drive these things. So just go ask people to do sensors to give you data for analytics, and then they'll be excited on what you learned today. But ultimately, this is a very interesting opportunity. There's ways that you can be using technology that you may not have thought of before. Louisiana is in a very interesting position now. You have attention, you have funding, you have interest in people that everyone wants to try and help work to make this, to recover and get everything better. And that won't always be the case. So taking the time to figure out how you do some of these things that encourages organic growth and drive in the areas that you live is a good way that you can make sure you come out of this and you'll be the strongest Louisiana you've ever seen. And I'm looking forward to working with that as well. So thanks for the time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'll hit it back to Chris.
Well, I'd like to start with a question, actually. just curious what you found as far as, I think it's pretty obvious you can demonstrate with the use of technology a return on investment and better services and all of that. I'm just curious, what are the main barriers when you're making the pitch to local governments and everything else that kind of prevent them from making that investment? Is it just lack of vision? Is it resistance to change? Things are good enough as they are?
Okay, that's a great question. So what are the biggest inhibitors? I'll tell you the biggest inhibitor that I run into on this is people thinking we're making a technology discussion. Right, because if I go in and talk to CIOs from some cities, right, they're sitting here and they'll upgrade infrastructure, they'll make sure security protocols are in place, they'll put in the right infrastructure, but a lot of the leadership is coming from the political leaders and the city leaders in there, and they're getting their eyes open. When I talk about these crime things, we're literally talking to chiefs of police, right? If they'd see that that's going to help them keep their city safer, then their trade-off isn't am I going to buy this thing out of technology, or am I going to buy 2 more servers? It's, am I going to get a couple police cars, or am I going to do this? And if that's the discussion that you're having because you're addressing how it helps the city be better, you get the right kind of buy-in, and it actually works pretty well. If you make it a discussion about technology because a technology person is talking to you, it's not that interesting, right? And most people don't have a mandate on the technology side of cities to go and say we're going to revolutionize policing because we're in this area. That's just not how they're set up. So that would be one thing I'd say. It's buy-in from the visionary, progressive leaders that want to run their cities better that makes it more successful. Other questions? Great. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate the invite. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.